Hello and welcome to the final edition of the Low Code Cafe for 2022. This is Cafe issue number, for 2022, it's Low Code Cafe number 122, the Christmas edition. So very special episode we've done. This is our third annual. And today we'll be doing a year in review, a little 2023 roadmap, talk some about community success and highlights. And we'll hear from the CEO about our vision for the year to come. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantanet, and I'm joined on the panel today. We have Bogdan Litescu, our CEO, Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager, and momentarily we'll also have Peter Schottman, who is the product owner and serving us ably in making the product better day by day. So he'll be with us momentarily if I can promote him. And we'll give that a second to happen. Okay, great. So with that, we will dive right in and start on our agenda. Before we do that, I wanted to ask you, please, to in your chat, if you want gifts for a good little low coders, please use the chat to send us your mailing address. This is anywhere in the world, right? But if you'll name and mailing address, there will be gifts for good little low coders. So go ahead and get started on that. Just send it to the host and panelist. You don't need to let everyone know you're here, but if you would send it to us, I would appreciate that. Good. So we're going to start with product year in review, and or we also call the segment the Ghost of Christmas Past. A year ago, we were on version 118. We're now on version 124. So just going to take the opportunity to talk big scope about what's different between then and now. And we'll probably dive into the product a little bit and show some of these things. But first, just in terms of product overall, one of the big things that we tackled was adding Bootstrap 5. And by the way, panelists, feel free to jump in here if you have comments or corrections to the information I'm giving, but hopefully you have additions. So prior to, in the earlier version, at 118, we only had Bootstrap 3. We added Bootstrap 5 and began the sunset process for that. We'll be announcing dates when that's actually done, and we'll need to complete your migration. But right now we're supporting both. Another thing that we used to have glyph icon as a way to show icons in the product. That was replaced by Font Awesome, and then Font Awesome we were actually using an earlier version, 5. something, and Font Awesome advanced to 6.2 that had a lot more icons, and so we've modified the product to use that as well. So a slightly different way to do icons, and really a better, more supported set of icons. During this course of time, we updated our minimum to DNN 991, and also now we have support for DNN 911. So we're supporting all the way back to 991, and if you're using version 1.23 or better, you can use 911 as well. We've been talking a lot about changes that we've made to the user interfaces, and that's an ongoing big story project. We've done 2 of our administrative interfaces, APIs and automations, and now we'll continue to expand that. Generally, throughout the product, we're using low-code components more frequently. So this is part of selling our own story as we display data or collect information, and I'll show you where these are in use. But the idea is that not everything has to go through or be done in coded development, that low-code components like action form or the listings module can do that work and do it in a more consistent and maintainable manner. So we're using our content internally into the product. And also we added multi-portal licensing as an option. So let's just dive into what a few of these specific things are. So we'll look here at the users page. So I've got a couple of versions going on, 118 over here, 124. I'll probably be doing a lot of clicking around, so hopefully I will not confuse you too much as I do that. But at 118, the user screen looked like this, and when we went to 124, the user screen looks like this. Wait for it. So a more modern look, but also some new functionality that wasn't there before. I'm going to get to that. So for example, this is more low code than it was before. It also has the ability to impersonate a user. When you do a new user form, this is now a low-code form, and it has some options. You can either specify a password directly or send a standard welcome email where they set up their own password. So more options provided there in the user screen. Just by comparison, the old version, this was not low code and didn't offer those password type options, didn't offer impersonate if you're a user that has the rights to do that. Good. So another area that has changed in this last year is entities. So we now have the ability in entities to do an export. This option was added here, and so then an entity can be exported and imported into a different system. And so then there's the corresponding import button. And then just recently in version 124, we have this initial and default values functionality, so that, for example, as you're adding a new field, you can, or a new property, if we add a new property, we can make it be required and have an initial value set even as the record gets saved, so that the requiredness of it can be set, and yet there's values in it. And so if we were to take a look at that, having added that to our customer entity, we now have address, but they all come in as unknown. So you can also establish defaults for values. If you aren't, it's not required, you can establish a default for value, and this will be given automatically when we generate our custom designed forms. It only impacts the automatically generated forms that we generate for you, but that's the default value translates on. And we discovered through a question that this will support tokens as well. So it's really some nice new features there in entities. We've done a lot of work in the updates screen. And so if you look at updates from a year ago, we had our old interface. And so that was the look. When we go to updates in our new interface, it's all been converted over to low code. The legacy, the old version, is still available here if you want to go back to it, but shortly that will disappear. The updates is now, we like to provide these legacy or old versions so that you can switch back and forth when they're initially released, just for stability purposes or familiarity, either one. So you can use what you're familiar with while you get used to the new one, or if we've missed something in the new one, we don't want to prevent you from, for example, being able to update. So we've got these switch back and forth, but the new look takes advantage of our listings and all the features that come with our listings, like the ability to filter and search. All that's built in, and yeah. Additionally, so there's that new look and feel. In the course of the year, we also built the ability to update DNN. So if you need to update the platform, in addition to updating Plantain app, that can be done in a one-click manner if you have the appropriate rights to do that. And again, all this is done in low code. And then there's another feature, another area where we modified in here is to start adding the ability to say that there are recommended and critical updates that you need to do. So those will start to show in the menu here on the left when those exist. And when you come in here, you'll see them flagged as critical or recommended hotfixes that you can install. So yep, many changes in the area of updates. And then if you followed along recently at all, version control was introduced in our last version, and it's being improved in the version about to be released, but it didn't exist at all prior. So version control, and I don't have it set up here on this demonstration system, but it gives you the ability to specify a Git repository and then save all of your content out to the repository. You'll be able to push all or parts of your application that you're working on out to the repository. So it gives good audit tracking, and this is part of our long-term story for multiple environments to be able to move content from a development environment to a test environment to a production environment, all seamlessly through Git. Good. So that's in the configuration area. We did some changes in forms. We added currency field, was updated in the let's see, as we transitioned to Bootstrap 5, we came up with a new currency field. The date and time fields were added to replace a legacy one, and where previously we had a date time picker, and let's see if I can navigate over. So in the current version, we now have a date and time picker, but also a date picker and a time picker. They're all very similar, but when you get into configuring those fields, the date, when you add a date picker type field, it only asks and presents options related to dates, and so it simplifies the setup directly to that. Likewise, a time picker only offers a configuration related to time. Previously, the date and time picker was the only option, and you configured it to do date and time or date or time, and so there were many options that were either confusing or conflicting. So now we've simplified that and just simplified generally the way that those get used. For comparison purposes, if we look at just the general look of the forms, this is what our forms look like at 118. And when we look at them under 124, so there's a little different look and feel to the way that they're styled and colored. So that's just kind of a general change in that area. So a modern look and feel. And then let's see, I mentioned currency. Currency changed quite a bit. And so there was one that was there prior and was removed or made obsolete. We have a new Bootstrap 5 version of that. While we're talking about forms, the Bootstrap 5 was implemented by way of a new template. So in our older version, we had templates like Bootstrap and Material and no CSS. That's the Bootstrap 3 version that we had for many years. In our newer version, we have templates like the default template now is Bootstrap 5, and hopefully your new development will be happening there. But the Bootstrap 3 is still there. It's marked as obsolete, and in the year to come, probably next summer, that will be retired. Good. Go back to a single view here. Quite a few changes on listings. As part of the Bootstrap 5 release, we went from having, let's see, listings. The views that were available were legacy, listing, and calendar. As we look at them now, there is the legacy view, and then we have data table, cards, and calendar. And so any of these three, calendar, cards, and data table, are Bootstrap 5. If you need, if you're still using Bootstrap 3, you would just have the legacy mode turned on and then have access to all the options for the old version. But data table is the new typical vertical listing. Cards is more of a, we can switch that on, I guess, and see it. So we see, for example, we're in card view and it's turned on. So this is a list of pages or tabs. So this is the data table view, more traditional top to bottom kind of list. Card view gives you a different way of looking at it. And then there's a calendar view as well. So those views were added. Among those, let's see, with that, there is detail views were added, and so you actually have on the detail views you have different. Well, let's show this. Look at the old version of a listing. A detail view always showed up underneath the row, so it opened up. I think we call that inline. So whatever the details were showed below, and you had to build the detail view. They provide the layout for what was going to be displayed when you click to details. In 124, you have the ability to you can still do that inline view, but you can also do in pop-up or left and right, and this is accomplished when you're defining, let's see, where is this done? In the action. So when you open up the custom details action, there's a custom detail view and a display mode. You can choose whether it shows on the left, the right, inline, or modal. So if we wanted it on the left, for example, now when we click this, the pop-out comes from the left and displays it instead of above. So it gives you some more choices on the way that you can display information, more of a tray type format. And then the next one is the detail view action. So I've used that here. And again, you have the choice of where it displays, but this action looks like the action is called detail view, and it only provides where do you want it to come up. It doesn't say what it looks like. You don't have to define it because it's pulling that choice from when you have when you're looking at your fields, you have an option as to whether or not it appears on the detail view. So it's an on-off switch. And so, for example, if I want tab ID, if I want everything to show, I can just turn that on there. you see an indicator here that shows that it's visible there. And so once you make that save, the detail view will now include, oh, I might need to refresh here. The detail view would now include that additional piece of information, the tab ID. And there's some nice things that are built into this, that you can copy this content to the clipboard. It's just kind of automatic built in. So nice functionality. That's the detail view action. So one of the nice and big differences, and again, I'm going to go to my split screen view, is the way that it filters. And so this nice modern experience of what a listing might look like in the in our old in 118, the overall listing was cleaned up between 118 and 124. The filtering experience from 118 was you clicked filtering, activated, and then you could choose between choices here that were populated for you automatically. The filtering experience now, these things, just filtering is enabled, they are automatically built. And then you have, for example, the ability to search and select all or clear all or choose individual and choose them in an additive way. After you've made selections, you have the ability to clear all. So a nice, better filtering experience. There's a lot more under the hood and more things that you can do with these. But that's kind of the main experience difference. You can say that you can turn on and off this top area, so that you can have more data, less header, but the header is kind of the default. Another difference, and again, this is just kind of diving in a little bit onto the font awesome versus glyph icons. We have a in our older version, we had both font awesome and glyph icons supported. And notice it was version 5.14 was what we supported. If we go to the listings in the new version, looking again at our same button, glyph icons has gone away, and you use select icon to pick a new icon. And we're up to version 6.2. In our just kind of a nice to have kind of thing, the older version had this primary, but now we also have in our styles the things like outline primary, which gives a nice effect. So there's more choices that are built in terms of styling. So now when we refresh, this next button appears with some hover built into it, but in the primary color. So there's some nice things that are built in there as well. And then to our more recent changes, in automation and APIs, we have gone from an old interface that looks like this. We have a job, no namespaces. When you edit, it's all, it's the old and familiar editing capability. But in our new version, if we look at automation, we have namespaces. So this happens to be in the default namespace. We've got our job here. We can edit it, and we get a lot of things that are built in, like one thing is drag and drop. So if I were to have a second action here, like send email, and if I put it even into the wrong section, when you can not only reorder, but you can move things from section to section. If I can figure out where to drop it. There it is. So that's that one thing there. I think that's worth the price of admission, because if you put it there, there was no nice, easy way to move it from one place to another. Another way to use that same functionality is if you have an execute actions, for example, and we can put our actions inside of an execute actions. So just drag and drop it. It lets you structure your application better. Along the way, I'll just open up really quick. We've got this action that's creating a test token that has the value of AAA. Couple things as we look at the send email. Notice that when I expand it and start scrolling, that these action buttons don't scroll away. That we know that we're trying to reduce the amount that you have to scroll, so those actions remain up there. And as you scroll and you're within an execute actions, that doesn't scroll away. So the idea is you don't have to scroll quite so much, you don't lose your place quite so much. So better user experience. We also have some things that we're now doing some validation. That's the direction we're going, where things that are required or should have certain values get validated. So, for example, having an email action that doesn't have a to address is not correct. So it will stop you before you save it and let you put in, prompt you for good validation. And then there is the ability to enable or disable an action just with one click. So one click that disables, or you can re-enable it again. Of course, we see this flag that's missing a parameter, so that's something we can fill in. There's another feature that was added recently that begins, again, having to do with rolling out this new interface where we have token autocomplete, so you can start typing and start getting suggestions for tokens. And so that's more of a click and point and click kind of a thing, rather than a go and look it up in wherever it was defined in tokens or above. And we are also starting, so we created this test token up above here in create tokens. We now also have, as we do our autocomplete, the tokens that are created in the current context are also available to choose from. So the idea is to simplify and make this better and more usable as we go along. And then I pointed out that if we cancel out of this, we have namespaces, so you can divide up your jobs, in this case, by namespace. And so that's an organizational thing, makes it easier to find the things that are related to a particular area of your application. And let's see, those same changes also apply to APIs. Because it's newer, you'll want to make sure, look at this button. We have an old view, new view selection, but you're going to want to see these under the new view. And so when you edit, you get that same kind of experience where you can drag and drop and expand and activate, and that's and again, this is something that we're going to be rolling out to the entire product. Good. And last slide, this Ghost of Christmas Past segment, that we made some changes to the way things were named and the way they were grouped. We had some older terminology, like create a list from SQL, that's been renamed create was create entity from SQL, and then having to do that naming having to do with the way that we did things many years ago. We've since introduced the concept of entities, so then that became very confusing. Are you talking about an entity data table, or are you talking about an entity memory object? So we changed our terminology to talk in terms of lists instead of entities, and we made some other naming changes. And then better grouping, because as you put things in on the menu, as you do the drop downs for where things exist. We've rearranged things to make more sense to put them there. So some things moved around, and then also some things have been made obsolete over the course of the last several revisions. We've been taking things that have been marked as obsolete for a long time and removing them. Some things that had easy replacements or were no longer applicable, we've removed them. So that's the Ghost of Christmas Past. I will invite Peter to step forward. We can, because we're not stopping here. We are doing 2023, where we have a interesting roadmap, and maybe Peter can talk to that a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Dale. Happy to be here. Okay, yeah, I'm happy to talk about the roadmap we have for 2023. And there are many interesting items on that. Let me just go over the list. I have 2 pages of roadmap items. Yeah, the first one is we're going to realize a marketplace this year, and that marketplace will contain templates, custom add-ons, so your own code add-ons that you can install in Plant an App, and low-code components. And what we mean by low-code components, that, for instance, are workflows to do a payment sequence. You start with getting the client in a shopping cart and go all the way to payment and a thank you. So that are workflows, that are maybe entities that are involved, and you can package that and put it on the marketplace. So that's already, of course, we have many times we discussed this idea of a marketplace, and I'm sure that we're going to realize that this year. The second big item we're going to work on, and that is a project that will probably take more than 1 year, is the move to .NET Core /Linux/containers. The idea is here that we want to be future-proof. Many enterprise clients, of course, ask us about this feature, because web forms are more or less a thing of the past. They are, of course, supported for the next 10 years, I believe, by Microsoft, but still, we want to be in a better place. And a better place, that means that we want to separate components in their own environment. For instance, we now have automation and APIs, and you could envision a situation that you have the API functionality or the automation functionality in a separate container. That could be on Windows or it could be on Linux, but if you have a use case for that, for instance, you do many requests to or you get many requests to your APIs, it's more efficient to put them in a separate bucket. So the idea is to become more flexible, have more speed, and of course be future-proof. Yeah, then the third thing that's also very exciting, I think, and that is a mobile app. So the idea is here that we want to have a mobile app with mobile features like, for instance, barcode or QR scanning, geolocation, or authentication, and that integrated into a mobile app, because these are specific mobile features, and let that mobile app talk to you Plant an App application. Currently, we're working on a mobile app for a client of ours, but we also want to have a demo application for you to try it out and play with it. what we technically we currently implementing it as a web view around your Planton app application, and of course we are also working on an improved skin that looks more appish, so that you, for instance, have an off-canvas type menu that looks much more like what is currently normal in apps like on iPhone or Android. So the thing we are currently working on is the GitHub integration. The GitHub integration, that means that you can commit and sort of backup your state of your application to Git. So every change you can generate a commit and see the development of your application in Git. But of course, we want to go much further than that. We want to also get into the pipeline that you develop on a certain environment. You push those changes to Git, and then you go in QA and pull the changes you did on development in your QA environment and test them there. And if it's okay, you can also pull those changes into your production environment. So you got a nice pipeline to make your work and your commits and your movements from development to production much easier than we currently have. The next thing is application templates. Currently, we have a starter application template and a blank application, but the problem, of course, is when you're developing low-code applications that you start from a blank slate. And this is what we want to change. We want to, of course, also provide the marketplace for templates, but we want to develop templates that are sort of best practices or common use cases that we see with clients, and that you can use those templates as a starting point for your new project. So this is our 5 things we are doing. On the next slide, we have some extra things we are also, of course, working on. One is what we're starting is quality initiatives, so that we have more streamlined processes for upgrading, installation, and first-time use of Planton app. We see that we already made lots of changes or lots of improvements in the upgrading process. Since for instance last year, we don't have the problem anymore that we are mixing and matching module versions like we used to have, but there are still lots of possibility for improvement. The same is installation. For those are using DNN, you know that it is a highly technical process to install Planton app and DNN. We want to make that much easier, for instance, through the use of containers. And the third part is, of course, first-time use. First-time use that you want to be able to seamlessly build an app when you start with Planton app. So things should be intuitive. There should be a workflow in your in the process project or the product built in to help you move forward. What of course we also are doing, and Dale already showed that the features we have now in automation and API, such as drag and drop, validation, prevent overrides between screens, IntelliSense, and of course we want to move that to the to listings and to forms. This is a big undertaking because forms and listings are very complicated projects, so we have to really be careful not to break stuff. The last point I want to make to point out is health monitoring. We will, of course, move much further than the things we have right now. And now we have logs and logs and logs, but we want to have better explanations, notifications, and general improvements that you know, that you can see the state of your systems. So that is it from me. I hope you like what we're going to do. And if you have any feedback, please get in touch.
So I'll just start with a little bit of feedback that, I see things on here that I know that we're already undertaking or actively starting the planning on. And so I'm just encouraged that what we're going to be able to deliver here over this next year, I think is going to be impressive. And I think they're the right things. They're very good, useful things. So thanks for
and ambitious.
Sir?
Useful and very ambitious things.
Yes. So when we emailed about this webinar, we threw out a challenge to either to the community in general, hoping that you would either summarize an accomplishment, highlight the value of something that we've provided, some kind of an application success story, or thanking a community member publicly. And I just, if you came prepared to do any of that, or if you have it, I would just appreciate that you find the raise your hand function and do that, so that I can call on you and ask you to do it. While you're thinking about that, I will just start it off and say, I'm going to start by thanking a community member, which is Jerry Maddox. The map things I was able to put into both the low-code cafe and an app I developed for personal use. And so just the willingness to come on to show an application on the low-code cafe, and then to provide all the code to do this functionality. It's just kind of over and above. But it's not really fair to single out Jerry, because I know that everyone that's currently on this webinar has participated to some degree in terms of helping somebody else, whether it's directly one-on-one, or through the community forum, or on our Friday afternoon low-code campfire. I say Friday afternoon, Friday morning for me, low-code campfire. There's been so many different ways that people have helped one another over the years. So I wanted to thank you for that. And I see there's a big rush for nobody to raise your hands, but if you have one of those, I'm going to stop for a second, let somebody see if they want to participate. And if not, that's okay. But we do this from the spirit of this community has just been something that really has been, I think, something very encouraging to me and to others throughout this year. So good. All right. With that, Bogdan, can I get you to share your screen and talk a little bit about vision for? I mean, Peter's thrown out some ambitious projects, but what's your vision for Plantain App?
Sure. You have to stop sharing first, and now I can do it. Good. So we learned about a lot of stuff that happened, a lot of ambitious stuff that is going to happen. But to put things into perspective, and why we are doing what we are doing, and why do we see this becoming a bigger and bigger things. So maybe I'll start with what we see now when we talk to various of our prospects and customers, is that there's a lot of projects, so a lot of ideas for digital transformation projects to automate work, to improve, sometimes to improve revenue with new portals or new products. But this backlog gets bigger and bigger, and the systems that are in the organization, they grow old, like we all see around us. So they accumulate technical debt, and at the same time you have a high employee churn across all departments. So then you start losing skills, important skills that take time to replace, to pick up, because IT is busy. It's busy, one, from the resource perspective. I never heard a company saying, oh, we have just enough developers or more developers than we need. It's usually the other way around, that the IT departments have to tackle a lot of competing priorities with very limited resources. And at the same time, organizations already have some systems. Some are very old, legacy that are maintaining. Some are monolithic systems, like we see a lot. So those monolithic systems especially are hard to touch, because if you touch something will break in a different place. Cybersecurity has become a bigger and bigger topic and challenge in the past decade. So most of the let's say new focus goes into the cybersecurity aspects. And of course, as these new initiatives start, the IT has to step in to scope the project. You know, how does, even if sometimes they outsource this project, still the IT needs to participate in scoping the systems, the integrations, and so on. So this is a problem that we are addressing with Plant and App, with low code. And if you read the market research, everybody speaks about how the future will look like. And this is our version of this future, because we see a future where everybody in the organization will be able to automate their job to build digital systems. And of course, by everyone, I mean the 10%. It will always be the 10% that are the promoter, and then you have, let's say, 60% that are passive contributors, and then the rest that are just following. But unleashing a force outside of the IT department to take on the challenge of building the digital transformation. Because I strongly believe that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when an organization hires, let's say, an accountant or an HR person, that person will have to know to automate their work. You know, like today, everybody knows to use spreadsheet. You wouldn't hire an accountant that doesn't know to use spreadsheet. 5 years from now, you will not hire an accountant that doesn't know to automate his job or her job, because then it means that they are doing a lot of manual things, and which are prone to error. They are time consuming, and of course, they don't stimulate people's creativity and motivation. Because what we see is that we are moving more and more in the era of creativity. You know, mundane tasks can be solved through technology. We have UI coming, AI coming, you know, to solve these simpler problems. So the true value of people will move more into being creative to come up with new things or solve existing problems in a different way that hasn't been thought before. So what does this mean for organization? Well, first of all, it means composability, because right now the problem is that we build a very large system. Of course, you are afraid to change it, you are afraid to touch it, and then that system grows old because the world moves on and moves on at a very fast pace nowadays. So then by allowing people to build their own application, of course, they don't build the same applications, you know, so they start composing applications that talk to each other. And when you want to replace an application, it's easy. It will not affect the others. When you want to perform maintenance upgrade, again, it will not affect the others. And the vision is, of course, that the real asset is data. You know, all organizations, most of the organization understood that the real asset is the data and the IP. By IP meaning maybe processes, the way they do things. The applications are important because they are expensive to build. But once they are not expensive to build anymore, they will become a commodity, right? You have the data and you build all sorts of applications on top of the data as people need them in the day-to-day life. There's also the sustainability aspect, because if many people in your organization start building applications, you no longer have a problem that you rely on a certain department that's understaffed to build system and maintain them current, right? So by democratizing the application development, it creates a sustainable environment, and people also, and we see this nowadays as well, people that get it from their whatever they are doing, let's say an accountant, once they get into this this mentality of let me automate this, let me automate that, because I'm doing it all over again and it's not efficient for me. We see people becoming more motivated, you know, becoming more attached to organization, to the team, to their work. They have more ownership into what they do day to day. And of course, it's scalable because with automation technology, you can scale at an exponential rate relative to the human resources you have. Now, whereas without this, it's maybe a linear kind of scalability. And I think that's it. Of course, this is let's say the big term visions. But the big term vision, but what we already see seeds planted in all of this. And I think this community understands very well, because we know many people in our community are not professional developers, but they build systems much better or much faster than a team of professional developers in the same amount of time or even faster. So thank you all for being part of this community. We are on a journey to build something amazing here.
Well, very good. If you can look at the next slide, there's still an opportunity for good little low coders to get in on the Christmas gift. And there's still one or two that have not done that. So put your mailing address in on the chat, or you can send us an email to hello@plantanap.com. But that has to be in before I ride, because Merry Christmas. I just want to take a minute to look in my bag and see what the present is for our good little low coders. Could you show them, Bogdan? Aha. Your own very own customized VIP low code engineer baggage tag. And it's just our gift to you. With that, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and hope to see you all in the new year.
Thank you, Santa.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Santa. Bye-bye.